Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Councilwoman Carumba, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba. Here. Councilman Dewitt. Here. Councilman Slakta. Mayor Simmons.
Here.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Here.
Councilman Gibson. Councilman Forbes.
Here. All right, now time for public comment. Anybody in the audience? Good morning, Rick.
Rick Steinmeier. I believe that the turn-in by Tuffy's, currently I can drive from Tuffy's all the way to 7-Eleven on the beach road without going onto the beach road, but that's going through a residential neighborhood. They're currently behind the shopping center over to Windsor is not developed, and part of it's commercial property, and there's a couple houses on Windsor that would be affected. You certainly need a light at Windsor and Bonita Beach Road. That's a very bad intersection. Lots of accidents at that light or a roundabout, and I think we go forward with help a little bit. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment at this time? All right, seeing none. Carl or Arlene, do you want to introduce our
Good morning.
next?
Yes, we're pleased to give you an update on the quadrant study of the Bonita Beach Road Visioning Project. We have both of our consultants here today with us, John DePalma with McMahon Associates and Ian Lockwood with Tool Design Group. We also appreciate that our community partners are here from Lee County and Collier County, as well as our secretary as well. So I'd like to turn it over to our Public Works Director to begin.
Well, I'll cut to the chase. We have John DePalma here from McMahon Associates. We've been meeting with several stakeholders here locally to talk about the Bonita Beach Road Visioning Plan with Ian from Tool Design Group, as well as John, and how those two relate. And McMahon has got some draft alignments that they would like to present for City Council's consideration for the quadrant study, all four quadrants, the northwest, northeast, southeast, and southwest. So, John?
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. Again, my name's John DePalma with McMahon Associates. I'm pleased to come before you today to give you an update on where we are with the quadrant alignment plans.
Can I stop you one quick second? I apologize. I forgot to make a public service announcement. If anybody's parked at the post office, please move your car. Sorry about that.
Okay,
all right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem. You recall we were before you several times at the beginning of the year talking about the various concepts and points and features of the network study. And what the focus of that was, at the outcome was, let's look at the quadrants around the US 41 Bonita Beach Road intersection. And we did show you some very casual, if you will, or loose concept alignments on what could take place in those various quadrants that Mr. Feeney pointed out to you. We're going to walk you through some of those today. We're going to show you some of our suggestions. We are still in the early stages of the process. I want to make it clear we have had very limited public agency coordination. I'm talking about with the Florida Department of Transportation, with Lee County MPO and Lee County DOT. What we have done in cooperation with the city and Ian Lockwood of Tool Design, we've made numerous presentations to three bodies of the MPO presenting the visioning plan in conjunction with the quadrant alignment. But nothing's been before these agencies other than just some casual conversation, some items of awareness, and also discussing some suggestions on how we could move forward. But we still have a little bit more work to do. So we're going to walk you through that today. The exhibit I have in front of you right now is what we're going to call the project layout or summary. We're going to talk about the northeast quadrant, the northwest quadrant, southwest, and southeast. As you can see from this exhibit, we have kind of a two-tier process in the southeast quadrant because we went a little bit beyond what we presented to you earlier in the year. So we're going to continue to work through that. This is the expansion of what we consider just a local network to allow traffic to flow in and around the intersection of US 41 and Bonita Beach Road. Now, this particular exhibit's a little bit crowded, but I'm going to walk you through the points. One of the things we're looking at is the access criteria. The DOT of both Florida Department of Transportation and Lee County have criteria for certain classifications of highway. And this particular corridor on both Bonita Beach Road and US 41 is Access Management Classification 5. What that helps us with, it discusses what are distance criteria for full median openings. What is also distance criteria for directional, whether you have what we call those little peanut islands that actually control the access for left turns, but don't permit cross access. It's not a full movement intersection. It also makes suggestions for signalization spacing and what we also call some side street friction factors, which are driveway or access entry points onto the main arterial. As you can see here, we have a number of little circles. What those little circles are is just a configuration of the intersection to show you the number of lanes that are there. And by the way, this particular PowerPoint has been submitted to both Arlene and Mr. Feeney, so you guys have it in your files if you ever need to see a full print of it or whatever after this. So we're going to walk you through the quadrants, but we just want to show you, you can see the different spacing of signalized intersections along US 41. This is US 41. This is north. This is Bonita Beach Road. We're going to try to hold that orientation as we go through these particular exhibits. And I might go back to this occasionally. Okay, we're in the northeast quadrant now. This is US 41. This is Bonita Beach Road. North is actually horizontal, left and right. One of the things we were looking at in our earlier quadrant alignment was trying to take what you already have on your plans, Carolina, through. This is Carolina Street, connecting at Arroyo, but going through and connecting to US 41. We were also looking at an alternative that suggests Pennsylvania Avenue go through and connect to US 41. We're kind of looking at this alignment as more of a preferred suggestion. We're very sensitive to some of the environmental conditions we're going to be dealing with, which we haven't done yet. That's the next phase of our work, and I'll tell you more about that toward the end. We're very sensitive to acquisition of right-of-way and displacement of businesses. We're trying to be cognizant of that because the charge we were given back in April when we looked at this alternative network evaluation was we're going to propose recommendations for your capital improvement plan. We're going to propose recommendations for preservation of right-of-way so you have it in your comprehensive transportation element plan. And we were going to help you with furthering the advancement of the alignments, but also extensive coordination with the agencies, because without their support and your cooperation, we're not going to be able to advance the particular plans we're talking about today. So one of the plans, looking at this quadrant, what we're proposing is traffic could go along Arroyo, an existing street network, but they could connect through a roundabout and a separated right turn lane at the intersection of Pennsylvania and what we're proposing as an extension with its intersection US 41. Now this particular area here is an FDOT retention pond. We are still needing to coordinate with the agencies on how this alignment could take place, but this could be a structure, an elevated structure. There's plenty of profile that we can work with, in other words, grade separation that we could work with to propose a structure without encroaching on the functionality of what that basin is supposed to perform. But again, we haven't talked it out with the agencies or any of the permit agencies. But this is our proposed suggestion with a traffic signal here. Looking ahead to the next exhibit, on the opposite quadrant, the northwest quadrant, again, this is US 41. This is Bonita Beach Road. North is to your right or behind you. Assuming that we can accomplish a signalized intersection here, we're looking at this curvilinear alignment for this northwest quadrant going through this undeveloped property now behind the shopping center. I know the city has had some discussions with the folks that deal with this particular property, but we want to connect it to Windsor Road in this particular fashion, and we're suggesting a roundabout for efficiency of traffic movement at the location. Again, it hasn't been totally vetted out or totally analyzed, but we're proposing a roundabout there. Now, likewise, we know there's a signal here at the shopping center, and you might remember my earlier exhibit where we have some closely spaced traffic signals along here. If you look at this proposed signalization we're proposing with Pennsylvania Avenue connecting to US 41 and the extension across the intersection to the west to connect with Windsor and down to BBR, we're suggesting the possible removal of the intersection at Carolina and the intersection, signalized intersection of the shopping center. Why are we proposing that? You probably heard from Ian Lockwood when he presented the various visioning elements of Bonita Beach Road that roundabouts process vehicular traffic much more efficiently than traffic signals because they have the stop for red, yellow, and green, and so on. Roundabouts process vehicles in a continuous fashion. There's just a yield for the approach, but there's no stop. So the signalized intersections that are closely spaced will be problematic in its functionality adjacent to a roundabout. Again, they're just suggestions right now. So again, the proposed signalized intersection of Pennsylvania Avenue extended from Arroyo to US 41, the possible elimination of the traffic signal here at Carolina with the placement of a directional median to control turns in and out, the extension of Pennsylvania, if you will, or this new Windsor Road across this undeveloped property to Windsor with a proposed roundabout at Bonita Beach Road, and the elimination, presumably, of a traffic signal at the shopping center access.
John, do you want to wait till the end for questions, or how do you want to do it?
Probably either, Councilman Flynn. Then this is a short group of slides. I can go back and forth for you if it's not too confusing.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving ahead now to the southwest quadrant. I left you off with the roundabout at Bonita Beach Road. Again, north is to the right or behind you. This is Windsor Road existing, where we would come through in that alignment I told you about. This is US 41. Again, looking at Windsor, we believe that we can propose a roundabout here as you continue across Bonita Beach Road to the Windsor area. You might remember back in February, March, and April when we were giving you some progression presentations of our network evaluation, we were talking about presumably just having Windsor continue all the way through and down to Woods Edge Place. We realized that that particular alignment goes through a residential neighborhood. It wasn't our intent to presume that all this high speed or heavy volume traffic could just willy-nilly go through a neighborhood. We don't want to propose that, but we know if a street's there or a roadway's there, people are going to filter through it and find their access points, if you will. But we did look at this Windsor Avenue extension. You might also remember we came behind your city property. I believe it's some kind of water plant behind the city property. We're going to connect to near the church and near Foley Road. While this particular alignment has a preserved right-of-way already through what is called a Cypress Head, an environmentally sensitive area, we didn't have to evaluate that any further. It already exists. So we're not, again, suggesting the continuation of any roadway in that area, but we're saying your right-of-way is already preserved through that environmental area. However, it's still environmentally sensitive. It would still have to be evaluated through permit agencies and the like to see if anything's possible to ever even be considered to be extended across that particular environmental area. Likewise, too, when we thought we could connect Windsor back here and eventually get to Beaumont and over to US 41, it's rather problematic with the church property. We know on the southerly side of the church property they have more of a kind of a circular shape building area. That I understand is mostly for some of the school activities that function at the church. And this roadway wasn't the best location for that particular spot. It was problematic too with the number of turns being introduced, what we would call more friction factors, just slowing the movements down. While that's safe in an area of a neighborhood or a church, mind you, it's still not the best way to promote kind of a network expansion plan. So again, back where we were, this is Bonita Beach Road. This is Windsor coming through and its suggested roundabout there. Traveling in the southerly direction on Windsor, we propose a roundabout here in the neighborhood. And this is where we propose a curvilinear alignment coming through. Again, undeveloped area, but presumably could be environmentally sensitive. But it connects to Beaumont. As you can see, it's not a direct connection to US 41. Traffic that could use this corridor would have to come across this little connection or continue down Beaumont to Foley, where there's a signalized intersection. You'll see this better on the next exhibit. Again, these rights-of-ways we're proposing are variable, anywhere from 70 feet to as small as 30 feet. And the reason I say that is right here, we have a very constrained area. Again, as I pointed out, we're trying to be cognizant of right-of-way damages to both personal property and businesses. But as you can see in this constrained area, there's a residential property here, and I believe this is a storage facility. We were able to position an alignment through that is 30 foot of right-of-way with several feet, probably as most as 4 foot clearance in the northeasterly direction near that storage business. We would also propose a combination of using your complete streets, and I'll show you a typical section in a moment, but still cognizant of your complete streets vision to put those things on the corridor. They would certainly narrow when you get into a 30-foot right-of-way, and you probably would only have one particular sidewalk of a 6-foot dimension on one side. And again, I'll show you that typical section in a moment. So again, we go through this constraint. The right-of-way varies here from 40 to 30 to 40 to 50 here, and it's a little wider there. Why? Because of turning capacity, able to separate some of the turning lanes. But again, it's not an ideal connection to US 41, but it gets you to Beaumont. Again, you're in more of a kind of a commercial area, so traffic could filter over here to 41 or across Beaumont to Foley to the signalized intersection if they were so inclined to continue in a southerly direction. Moving to the southeast quadrant, I'm going to show you 2 exhibits in this area. You might remember we were proposing the extension of Arroyo through the existing signalized intersection behind the shopping center. We are still evaluating this geometry. It is very, very constrained. Along the westerly property line of this development here, they have a physical barrier, but on the other side is a 10-foot utility easement. In addition to that, the shopping center has their truck access circulation back here. So we're looking at how the concept could continue of defining a roadway, if you will, and separating it from this particular property, which still would involve right-of-way acquisition across this property. As an alternative, because I've seen this across a lot of different areas of southerly Florida, and particularly even where I live, where shopping centers are in proximity to quadrants where they have signalized intersections, a lot of the general traveling public just filter through those shopping centers regardless. It's not signed as a roadway. It's not signed for US 41 or Bonita Beach Road in this particular case. But if we provide some connections, there might be some issues that we'd have to look at from a liability standpoint on how traffic would be positioned to go there, along with what the development agreements might have been back in the time when those things were developed. But again, looking at this particular quadrant, and you remember how we were showing how Beaumont did connect in a circular period here right near the church to Foley. Foley's an existing signalized location. So we believe that we can make a connection here on Shanna Lane and propose a roundabout here, and you could possibly build a right-of-way or roadway here in this area, and not necessarily take it through the shopping center, but connect it through the shopping center, if in fact that was a desirous thing to do to continue with that network pattern. Looking a little further, sorry about that. Looking a little further south, this was the shopping center over here. Looking a little further south, and Foley was right around here. Here's a continuation of that right-of-way. And we know there's a development exists here. I think it's called Hunter's Paradise. They had on their plans a presumable connection across this pond. They have a roadway here, I think that's built today, but it ends in a dead-end situation here. Again, this is US 41. North is to your right. This is on the southeast quadrant, a little bit further south of the shopping center. So here's some connections that could be built along this industrial service road. At Bonita Crossing Boulevard, this could connect to that road that's unnamed yet, or it could be called a Royal Extension. This is a continuation of Woods Ed's Place across this presumable development that actually had this right-of-way shown on the map. We believe a smaller circular roundabout here would function to move traffic along this particular corridor. This is just kind of, I'll say, icing on the cake, if you will. This little section of roadway already exists coming off of US 41. We would just propose a connection along this whole particular alignment. So I was talking to you about typical sections. In the northeast and northwest quadrant, we're generally proposing a 70-foot right-of-way. This is a right-of-way that, and the features of it kind of mimic what the vision is for Bonita Beach Road, with a separate bike bike lane, a pedestrian sidewalk corridor, and another pedestrian sidewalk corridor with two 11-foot lanes. Of course, the lanes would expand when you got near either the roundabout location or the signalized intersection. Those were two quadrants. You would have various left turn lanes or through lanes and right turn lanes. But generally speaking, we can accomplish this particular vision in a 70-foot right-of-way. There might be areas where it would be narrow, particularly over the bridge, or we presume a bridge, over that pond we were showing you where Pennsylvania Avenue was extension. That right-of-way might go down to as narrow as 50 to 60 feet. These are the two typical sections that represent the other quadrants. The top is representing the southeast quadrant, and we say it with the utility easement. This was the alignment that is Arroyo extended south of Bonita Beach Road behind the shopping center where it's quite constrained. That's actually private property, so it would have to be acquired. But we're proposing, again, a narrow alignment with two 11-foot lanes, a sidewalk, not a multi-purpose trail, but a sidewalk, a little buffer between the property boundary of what that development was over here, and this area here is within that 10-foot utility easement. We're also proposing a barrier separation between the shopping center. This is the shopping center side, so you can imagine traffic on that side would deal with some of its employee vehicular parking and circulation and/or truck traffic that's making deliveries in and around that shopping center. But then the rest of the corridor that would be south of the shopping center would certainly not need the barrier separation. This could continue onward to the intersections of Shanna Lane or Foley. This lower typical section is for the southwest quadrant, the area that you saw where Windsor was extended and through that roundabout and through that particular quadrant that had undeveloped property and that narrow crossing we were doing between a property and a business. That right-of-way would have narrowed in that area to 30, but generally speaking, we're going to try to hold a 40 to 50-foot right-of-way. This would be a multi-use trail, and this would be one lane in each direction, 11-foot, two 11-foot lanes, some separation above a shoulder, and a little buffer between the right-of-way and the edge of the shoulder. So these exhibits constitute where we are today in the process of presenting to you our preliminary findings so far of what the alignments are and how they've been refined. As I said, we still have an awful lot of agency coordination to deal with. The agency of the Florida Department of Transportation, Lee County DOT, and we're also going to consider talking to Collier County, as there's some elements of how they are very close to you and how some of the influence of that particular county and how traffic moves in that area could also be effectuated by some of these network alternatives. I moved the slide back to the beginning just in case you want to have some questions or answers and talking points, and I'll certainly move this around. Matt, do you want to add anything? Or Arlene? Before the council, Mr. Lockwood, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd love to add something, Mayor and
I didn't mean to
Councilmember.
do that.
No, that's fine, absolutely.
I am really encouraged by what I'm seeing today. The people came out when we were here earlier talking about multimodalism, walking. It's no coincidence that the most walkable cities have the most streets, and you're considering new network, which will really help with that. It'll also help the intersection with 41 and Bonita Beach Road, which is under pressure, particularly in the peak hour and the peak season. And having some redundancy in your network will really, really help that. So I hope you pursue all the network you can.
If I could just add one more thing, Mr. Mayor, or a couple more things. I want to also conclude. While I didn't talk about it today, we are still looking at some other suggested options. As you can imagine, the intersection of US 41 and Bonita Beach Road is a fully expanded intersection. Double left turn lanes, your 3-through lanes, right turn lanes, et cetera. And we've often learned by working in the city since 2003 that that's a complicated intersection. We know it's been studied. We know there's some issues with left turn movements and things like that. You also saw through the tool design presentation how they told you about how this network expansion could help alleviate some of the turning movements at that intersection. We are still looking at how we could possibly change some of the configurations here. Again, have not talked to the agencies yet, but how we could probably move left turn traffic through as a throughput and possibly a U-turn, alternatively north end or south of the intersection, to possibly provide more green time to some of the corridor crossing at BBR versus having it be used for the left turn lane. In addition, and some of the experience of what my firm deals with, because we're a national firm, not unlike Tool's also a national firm, we've been talking to the city about presumable options to maybe even propose jug handle movements. Jug handle movements are what you see when left turn traffic is kind of problematic in conflict with the cross traffic, and that left turn traffic would be going through a through lane and making a right turn lane in an opposite quadrant to make a left and go the other direction. So those are some things we're considering. Now, a lot of the right-of-way in these quadrants is already built out. Those kind of configurations for a jug handle are kind of problematic. Could they be located possibly on other roadway networks within the area of the intersection? Yes, they can. But they're not going to be as efficient as you could imagine if you just had a virgin design and we could clean the slate and just draw a simple jug handle, because the complement to the left turn movement, even though it's rights, are the opportunity for the right turn movement in the opposite quadrant to go along parallel to its geometry to make its right turn movement, so it stays in that quadrant rather than going through a signalized intersection. Likewise, too, with the U-turn patterns that could exist beyond the intersection. If the volumes are quite heavy, you're going to need just as much storage space as you had at the signalized intersection in the U-turn pattern, and then you have the same condition again in an unsignalized environment where that U-turn traffic is crossing 3 lanes of traffic, going to get to a dedicated right turn lane to eventually make their left. So all those conditions, they're challenging, but we are thinking out of the box. We're trying to, one, use our design guidelines and the agency's guidelines as criteria, but also look outside the box within reason, still promoting safety, still promoting mobility of the traveling public, as well as what you heard from the Tool vision plan. We are not wanting to compromise capacity along the corridor at all. We only want to amplify it by extending local roads into a complete network.
Okay.
Done, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Great. Council, questions? Pete, you had a question?
Go ahead. So I'd start with the last point you made. This is not just not compromising capacity. It's adding capacity, in effect, to Beach Road, because it's allowing traffic to go up and make the left, freeing up the massive congestion problems we have at that intersection. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just 1 or 2 questions. One is that light at Arroyo, so you decided to basically move the light up. So what was mostly driving that, avoiding any conflict on Carolina Street?
Are you
Yeah.
referring to the light here?
I'm sorry, I said Arroyo, I meant by Tuffy's, which is,
Northeast quadrant.
thank you, yeah, Greg, Carolina Street.
Okay, you're talking
Yeah,
about
that
down
light,
here.
thank you, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were looking at the original plans that were developed in the city, I think back in 2006, if memory serves me.
Right.
That Carolina was on your comprehensive transportation plan element, and it was as a proposed extension of Carolina to connect to US 41. What we saw at the location was a roadway going through with a 55-foot right-of-way right down here, adjacent to 2 businesses. And at the time, the plans just showed a simple connection. But what it does, it actually compromises the access points of these 2 businesses. So we were looking at how can we make a more complementary plan. In addition, let me just back up one other exhibit. There was right-of-way acquisition here, too, across a property that's a house that sits against Arroyo in Carolina.
Right.
So we were looking at those 2 factors as trying to, again, minimize rights-of-way impact, minimize impact or acquisition of businesses or displacement of businesses. And we are looking at, while there's a basin here constructed, we don't want to destroy its functionality or its purpose, and that is to retain the water coming off US 41 and process it before it, is released. Typical, it's what South Florida Water Management would consider, and that's already permitted. We don't know about this feasible connection yet. We still have to vet that out, but we were thinking if we could bring Pennsylvania through here and connect, and it would align with what our Windsor Avenue proposal would look like, it would definitely require traffic signalization. Well, the spacing, as you can see, is 612 feet if there was an existing signal there. The spacing criteria for signalization for the access plan is 1,320.
Right.
So we would compromise that by a significant value. And while our firm and other firms likewise have gone before the DOT, or Lee County as governing agencies of signal control. You can certainly present an argument for compromise and a variance or exception. Sometimes they're granted, but not this large separation. This particular condition would only show a 612-foot compromise spacing, if you will, to a traffic signalization. So that would be, they would have to be obviously timed for the platooning or progression of traffic.
Right.
And it would probably be problematic during peak periods that you would see what's called the queue would build up and probably even encroach in the other intersection. So we were suggesting that Pennsylvania seemed to be a more safer alignment. I know we're taking traffic further along Arroyo and getting to the point of making its right on US 41, or if you were compromising the left here to come over here and go through this pattern. Again, it's just a relief valve,
Yep.
As we were talking about before, Councilman O'Flynn. So it's just a suggestion.
And what was your consideration, or did you consider a roundabout at Arroyo? We talked about this a little the other day, but I think for the public it would be good to hear.
Sure. The spacing from the signalized intersection of US 41 and Bonita Beach Road and the signal at Arroyo in this quadrant, and I apologize again for the size of this exhibit, is about 940, looks like 2 or 7 feet.
Arroyo's on the other, Arroyo's to the right, yeah,
Yes.
right,
Yes, Arroyo is right here.
right.
This is north.
Yep.
East-west. So the signal spacing, again, is 1,320. I'm sure it got in a variance or acceptance here for this particular spacing. I'm sure it's coordinated with this signal at the Spanish Boulevard area. So what we were looking at, if a roundabout was placed at Arroyo, it would, again, process traffic much more efficiently than a traffic signal. It would possibly back up traffic along US 41 and cause operational issues there, which would present an unsafe condition. So we didn't want to suggest a roundabout there. Now, I have this exhibit open. You can see, again, this is US 41, existing signal here. This is Arroyo and
okay,
Bonita
that's
Beach
Arroyo.
Road.
Yep,
This here is the signal to shopping center. It's 1,047. Again, a little bit further, but again, not the desirable 1,320. Here's Windsor. If you look at Windsor at 600 plus feet and 1,000 plus feet here, you're almost getting 1,700 feet there. That's why we were proposing a roundabout there. You could give you a little bit more space, if you will. We know that's problematic for a shopping center that already has an existing traffic signal, suggests its removal. But we believe through connectivity through the back of Windsor in a fashion over here as well as back here, and if this area were to be developed by a developer, there could be some improved access to both sides of the roadway, facilitating access. You would still have a right in, right out access here, or possibly even a directional in to the shopping center on eastbound Bonita Beach Road. But that was some of the ideas we were flirting with when we were looking at the locations of possible roundabouts. We weren't trying to put them at the intersection on the BBR, if you will, other than at Windsor. When we looked at Arroyo, it just seemed to be a little bit more problematic for spacing.
okay. Let's see what else I had. Well, after you did your presentation, you talked about other things you're talking about. And to me, that sounded like, from a layman's point of view, a Michigan turn lane south of Beach Road in order to allow the traffic to just go straight through on US 41, right?
Yeah, you could call it, I think the federal highway actually refers to as a Michigan U-turn.
Oh, all right. So you
That's
got-
okay, that's okay. No,
all
I
right.
knew what you meant.
All right. So it would seem to me that's something that should be considered really kind of seriously, because that would open up all kinds of green time through that intersection by not having a left and being able to go make the U below.
We are looking at that as we speak.
Okay.
We talked to our design team the other day before we presented the PowerPoint to you to show you today. We're looking at that possibility. We're looking at jug handle possibility. The Michigan U-turn, as you call it, we're evaluating right now the location of where that U-turn would take place, the available real estate, if you will, for providing a probably a little bit larger or wider median, the availability of storing some of that left turn traffic. Obviously, through signalization, there would be gaps, if you will, for safe maneuvers of that cross traffic. But again, you're going through a signalized intersection to an unsignalized location to make a U-turn. Again, you're going to be conflicting with 3+ through lanes,
Right.
and then they have to cross that, get into the right turn lane. And then we were looking at how we could provide a separation of that lane to continue in a free flow movement along north at that time. If I'm south of US, or I'm south of Bonita Beach Road, you would be traveling north backward,
Right.
and then to go east on Bonita Beach Road, we're looking at how we can separate that with an island.
And one last thing. Oh, John, great job, first of all, I should have said.
Thank you, Councilman Flynn.
I'm assuming all your separated bike lanes and your multi-use paths are separated from the traveled way?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So one little detail on that, it sounds like from what you said that the southeast quadrant is the most problematic.
Correct.
Yeah. But assuming that away, let's say you could do that quadrant. Why not have a multi-use path there instead of what you said was a sidewalk?
What we're dealing with, well, let me show you this exhibit.
Because my premise, John, which is unstated, is really who's going to really walk from Beach Road all the way south there? Why not have a multi-use path so people can walk and bike as well?
Sure.
Ah,
The dimensions are rather challenging. As I told you, it's a private development, so right away would need to be acquired for the cartway. We tried to keep it as narrow as we could, 30 feet. We're also trying to take advantage of an existing 10-foot utility easement. And utility easement, generally, you can't particularly construct a structure, per se.
Okay.
We're proposing a sidewalk in that area.
Right.
So if you look at, here's the property of what that development exists over here. We're looking northward now, if you just imagine that for a second. Here's east and west. Here's that development that's abutting the shopping center at the rear. So we have a little separation here from the property boundary. You have a 6-foot sidewalk. Could we make that a 10-foot multi-use trail?
Right.
We certainly could.
Okay.
Again, we just showed the 6-foot sidewalk here, trying to be cognizant to what we're trying to say is we're challenged with the right-of-way. But could it be 10 feet? It certainly could.
Okay.
So, but it would take advantage of that full space right up against the property line. In addition, we're trying to gain some separation here. Now, this might not be ideal separation from what would be two-way traffic here, truck traffic and or circulation of employee traffic, if in fact we could even acquire this right-of-way. So we have a physical barrier here, a vertical barrier, what we call a parapet. It would also have on top of it an anti-glare device or feature. That's for headlights. Because you can imagine when you're close proximity to two-way traffic, it's kind of disturbing as a motorist at night when you've got headlight glare coming at you. So again, that's only 6.5 feet of separation. It's not ideal. And if we go back and look at the exhibit, it's pretty tight in here. We have a problem right here with this one particular building of the shopping center that has a truck bay that would have to either travel along Arroyo and back in. Then you have this truck bay right here. Now, granted, down here you'd be separated. What we are looking to do is possibly even configure this a little bit differently, but then it would again require more right-of-way and probably be prohibitive for some truck traffic back there. So it's really disruptive to that particular business operation, which could be considered damages, which would have to go under some legal evaluation and consideration and coordination with the development. So again, that southeast quadrant, even though we proposed it as an option, is really problematic. So we're looking at other different ideas or options in that quadrant. But it's very, very challenging.
And last thing is, when Ian was here last, he presented some, I thought it was great data about how having these relief valves really freed up a tremendous amount of left-turn capacity jam on the intersection. And I'm assuming you have that, you're just not presenting that today.
Yeah, we did not do any exhaustive analysis. Our charge was not to do that. Our charge was to look at the preservation of right-of-way, the continuation of the effort to improve an expanded network,
Right.
and then vet it out for such things as environmental complications or right-of-way acquisition. And then also, and this isn't last because we thought about this,
Right.
it's going to be some extensive agency coordination because of the suggestions of traffic signalization and operation that the agencies, control in their roadway, and they're charged to move traffic along their corridors and for their constituents. So it's a combination of a lot of different features, but there are options here. We're still studying them. And hopefully we can come up with some ideas that make it a little bit less of an issue in this particular area.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Greg?
Yeah, I just got a few questions.
Sure.
If you go to northeast quadrant first, please.
Absolutely. Whoops, yes.
My question is you're going through and we've got to get right away through the DOT pond. Is there no way to just go straight off of Pennsylvania and connect to where the boat ramp is and put a light there? Is that too close to the bridge?
We haven't looked at that spacing, if you will, Councilman DeWitt, as far as the proximity to that. Again, we were trying to be sensitive to the environmental issues associated with that area. I know that's the boat ramp,
Right.
and we were looking at, could we come along here and come down here, and this could be adjusted? It's possible.
Yeah, because
It's
it
possible.
seems like it'd be cheaper than building a bridge over a pond.
Yeah, we wanted to show more of a complicated process first,
Okay.
so we can get the agency's take on what items are possible, and then we'd probably even have to talk to South Florida Water Management along with the DOT. And then once we understand some of those complexities or challenges, it might force us, because, I mean, we had a line, if you will, in that area originally. We had kind of an alignment of Carolina and that area of just Pennsylvania. We just kind of showed it straight through.
Right.
And we knew it was interrupting the access to the boat ramp. I think it's a county park.
It's a county park and it's a county boat ramp, and I just know from using it, you've got to go all the way up to the Tuffy or that intersection to make a U-turn to get there. So
Yeah, if I
we
just go
could-
ahead to the northwest, yeah, it's not that problematic to come up into here.
Right.
So again, that's not ruled out. It's not
Okay.
ruled out. It might even be something where it's in between this area, and then the boat ramp would still have access to a signalized intersection and probably come in off its side. But we have not ruled that out. We have not ruled it out. We just didn't present it to you today.
All right. The other thing, you may not have been tasked with it, but in all these scenarios, have we talked or have you talked about or thought about, are we going to upgrade any of the roads, the existing roads, like the Pennsylvania, the Beaumont, the Wisconsin, or the Windsor? Right now, those are just residential roads, and if we're looking at relief valves, I feel that there's going to be a lot more traffic than there are now on that. Are we going to upgrade those roads to be?
Some of those things
Traffic?
will be discussed in our final documentation and report as it helps the city look towards what features of any one of these plans, either it's the vision plan or these quadrant plans, can get into your CIP, your capital improvement plan. But no, we're not charged with that, but we can certainly suggest that obviously the corridor itself, the characteristics would have to be analyzed. Its width, safety issues, because you could presume a certain volume of traffic could go on it. Is the pavement structure, the depth of pavement able to handle that load of traffic? All those things will be casually, if you will, discussed, but they're not being analyzed, if you will, or not. They're not going to be engineered. But costing factors could be provided for that.
Well, that's what I was thinking, because if we're going to, let's say we do this one in the northeast quadrant, and it's going to connect to Arroyo and/or Pennsylvania through the roundabout, so you're going to have this nice multimodal path that ends abruptly right there at Arroyo and Pennsylvania to whatever it exists today as a regular sidewalk.
Sure,
So
but keep in mind, these are just preliminary
Okay.
alignments that'll get you the preservation of right-of-way ideas and then your capital improvement. At the end, we will have a cost estimate.
Okay.
The city charged us with that. So those features alone, when you get into final design, and those things are then fully surveyed, because these are just on aerial maps. If you get full survey and full geotechnical engineering evaluation and then drainage and the like, you'll wind up seeing that your roadway would have to be reconstructed or rebuilt in a fashion to support the traffic load.
Well, like you just said, you're
And the
tasked with
connections.
giving some type of estimate on this. I
Correct.
think
That's
that should be
correct.
part of the estimate, to connect the roads that we're connecting to do the same that's on these same roads. And my last thing, with my profession that I do, my personal opinion is we signed off on 11-foot lanes on Old 41 for the downtown redevelopment. To do 11-foot lanes here with no median or no relief valve, if somebody gets in an accident, for an emergency vehicle to get down through there, there's nowhere for those cars to peel off to go to, especially if you're talking about the southeast quadrant where you got a 6-foot Jersey barrier per se. On the west side, there's nowhere for them to go. So how is an emergency vehicle going to make it down these roads at the emergency vehicle itself is almost 10 foot wide. I know on Old 41, we alleviated that by some parking spots, and then also if there's any commercial along there, we required those commercial structures to be sprinkled.
Sure.
Anything new. So
Sure.
my concern is where are the emergency vehicles, how are they going to get down that, and where are the cars going to go to, lack of better terms, part the way so we can come down through the middle of an 11-foot road.
Sure. Let's look at the northeast, northwest quadrant for a minute. This is a presumable 70-foot right-of-way. It has curb and gutter, 10-foot bike lane, separated by 4-foot grass or sod or some other kind of feature. You have a 6-foot sidewalk, and you have a buffer here of about 2 feet. On this side, you have, again, 4-foot separation from the road to the sidewalk, and you have a 7-foot separation here. What we could do here is widen this roadway, cartway, if you will, and probably provide maybe even a 4-foot shoulder.
Okay.
So therefore, you would have a 16-foot lane plus 2-foot. You have an 18-foot lane if you had to. Maximum legalized width of a vehicle is 8 feet. So you could have presumably a down vehicle or disabled vehicle, and you could have emergency vehicles access
Okay.
that vehicle as well as have circulation around it. Again, this is just a tentative
Okay.
typical section and a tentative right-of-way.
Okay, and then obviously our southeast quadrant would still be the problematic child.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, it's through private property that, you know, we could certainly say and wave our wand that that's the right way we want to take, but it is problematic.
And I guess lastly, on the southwest quadrant, where the roundabout's going to go at Windsor, do we really think that that's not going to back up and it's going to handle that? I just worry about, there's a lot of traffic coming through Beach Road and 41. Is it going to handle Beach Road and Windsor with a roundabout?
Again, it hasn't been analyzed
Okay.
from a traffic engineering standpoint as far as volume or throughput. We would do a computerized model. It has not been done yet.
Okay, thank you.
And it wasn't part of this particular process. That could be vetted out during a final
So
design
it could
process.
be either a roundabout or a light there.
Yeah,
Moving.
and it could also even be something that could be very similar to the northwest quadrant. You know, we originally proposed an alignment we discussed with the city and Tool Design several weeks ago, and our first concept was to come in off of one of these intersections with Windsor in a T-type fashion, if you will. That's not promoting the fluidity of the traffic that would be processed through BBR and Windsor to get to US 41. We're not trying to make them stop and start and stop and start and stop and start. Likewise, with this particular roundabout, if the roundabout was problematic due to its spacing here, which this is probably about 600 feet, 700 feet,
Right.
the problem could, the issue could be resolved by a curvilinear alignment, and then this Windsor would tee up in here in a different fashion. That way it would be separating itself, if you will, from neighborhood traffic, probably making it a little bit safer, a little bit more isolated from that particular feature of throughput traffic versus neighborhood traffic. So there's a couple options.
Okay.
I hope that answered your questions.
Very-
You're
I don't know
welcome.
the protocol. Is it okay to augment answers?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, just asking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, please do.
It's encouraged.
I found this a very exciting discussion. Just about the last question about the roundabouts close together. We're using roundabouts now at interchanges. So, you know, when you have a diamond interchange with a signal on both sides of the highway on the arterial road, a lot of places are replacing them with roundabouts, and they're closer than these roundabouts at a highway interchange. So I suspect when it gets modeled, it has to get tested that it won't even be breathing hard. I don't think it will be a challenge at all. I think the signals are the challenge, not so much the roundabouts.
I just know from a historic standpoint that from Beach Road to the west, with the lights, it backs up quite a bit. And maybe I'm cautiously optimistic that the roundabout's still going to be backing it up all the way back to Vanderbilt almost.
Yeah, I think with a 180-second cycle length, it'll back up a lot, but the roundabouts don't have a cycle length, so I don't think you're going to find that.
Okay.
I'm guessing, though. I think the model will show it, but having been around the block a few times, I think you'll
And
be
do we have
happy.
enough room there? Because I know we've talked about roundabouts. The amount of traffic it has to handle is depicted on how big the roundabout is and how many lanes.
Yeah, you can see the size of these two roundabouts. This
Right.
roundabout on Bonita Beach Road is proposed as the 2-lane roundabout. This is a single-lane roundabout.
No, do we have enough room in that?
You'd have some corner clips.
Okay.
Yeah, again, without full survey or engineering, we could certainly make more of an oblong or egg-shaped roundabout, maybe force it into an area that has a little bit more freedom. There is a little bit more freedom, if you will, on the north side of Bonita Beach Road. You can see this area here. Maybe I can find another exhibit.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, there's a little bit wider area here, and I think that you can see the roundabout looks a little off-center from the center of Bonita Beach Road, but again, it's not fully engineered. It wasn't done through a survey, but it could be reshaped a little bit to try to avoid impacts.
Thank you.
You good, Greg? Fred,
thank
you
you.
had a question?
Yeah, I had just a couple real brief ones. I think it's important that as quickly as we can, even though it's not apparently in this contract, that we do this, for lack of a better word, the traffic benefit analysis, because if we're gonna market this to our partners, the county or counties and FDOT, that really helps sell a project, is what it does for Beach Road or 41. That's number one. Number two is, even in this study, can we get something that would say, like, for example, I'm just making something up, we could right away implement the Michigan turn lanes way out in front of doing some of the other hard construction. Anywhere we can do anything that makes a measured improvement, I think would be a good thing. It would be cost effective. Then the last one I had, and that is you called it an elevated structure at the pond. Is that how high is elevated?
The grade right now on one side of the pond is approximately 11 feet. The water elevation's about,
Right.
I think, 4 feet. So when I say elevated, I meant that we would propose piers or mechanically stabilized earthen structures and have the bridge elevated over the water
Okay.
with a certain separation.
Gotcha.
That would either one, again, not discussed with the agencies yet, that would have to be agreeable for maintenance access, vehicular access. They might have to use certain dredging vehicles to clean or maintain those ponds.
Okay.
We certainly wouldn't want to restrict that, to have them take a circuitous pattern around for maintenance. So,
Right.
but going back to your traffic model, while it's not in this contract, the city, Mr. Lockwood and myself has sat down with Don Scott, Johnny Limbaugh, and Ron Gogoy of Lee County MPO, and we have discussed some opportunity to talk to them about, one, providing some of the traffic data the city has collected over the last several years, and we've been a part of that. I know the county collects a great deal of data as well at certain times of the year, so they might be helping us and guiding us through some of those traffic operational or analyses points to provide some opportunity insight as we get further into the process.
Great. Thank you very much. Did a great job, by the way.
Thanks, Councilman Ford.
Amy?
Yeah.
Oh, you got just one more thing. I'm sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
Councilman. Just to address your mission, you made a comment about getting some quick fixes. I can tell you, the Michigan U-turn, if we're going to call it that, is still hard construction, because you got to look at it, wider median opportunities, storage capacity, signing, and all that.
Right.
And again, it's not something that would go very easily through the process, but certainly something we can consider and talk to the DOT about.
Okay, yeah.
Just a couple comments. Thank you. A very good presentation. It's obvious that this is going to be a somewhat long and tedious process of going through, particularly interacting with the agencies and getting agreement among all the parties that are necessary. So my question is, do we have any guesstimate of how long that kind of process would take, and before we could get to a point where we would be actually doing something? That's my first question. And my second question is somewhat unrelated, is that when we look at these quadrants, it suggests that we may not be able to do all the quadrants. If we can't do all the quadrants, does that negate the good effects that we have from the other ones? And then if we could provide some sequencing in how we would attack the quadrants, because I assume we wouldn't do them all at the same time. And finally, do we have some minimum cost estimates, and particularly the first year when we might likely have to come up with some pretty good money in there?
Sure.
Those
I'm
are-
going to try to answer your
I'm sorry,
questions.
there's so many all
No,
at
don't worry.
once.
No, I wrote them down because my memory's failing me. As you can see, I have some gray hair, so I am getting a
Written
little
down so
old.
I can repeat 'em. I had to write them down
So you
myself.
have to.
The cost estimates, that's the easiest answer. This particular project you charge us with will have cost estimates in it for the quadrants, for other ancillary items that we might come up with during the development of the process. It's going to be an extensive and expensive process if we were to consider, if we could just say theoretically, looking through our own rose-colored glasses, that this was all golden and the agencies were behind it 100% with all these options, or we tweaked them, whatever combination of, you will get a cost estimate, but I can tell you it'll be quite costly, but it'll be put in our final document. As far as sequencing, we hope through a process that we used when we did the network evaluation that we can come up with a certain criteria to help put the processes of these features in that little sieve, and it comes out, and we can put a process of priority together based on like the right-of-way acquisition and the problems with that, the cost associated with that, damage issues if it were private property or businesses, cost factors, agency considerations, because that's the next phase of our process, getting together with them to see what is problematic about what we're even talking about here today, so we can deal with that, and we'll propose some kind of priority, if you will, which would almost lend itself to a sequence of how this could be built. Quadrants, what if we did some and not do others? Would it impact the ones that weren't built? Not necessarily. Any enhancement, you probably heard Mr. Lockwood say it a number of times throughout the BBR visionary study, any enhancement in the network you can get is going to help the area, area-wide. Whatever we can get to propose from a standpoint of network expansion would be extremely helpful. And we did discuss that very preliminarily with the Lee County MPO. And that's why they were encouraging us to talk to them a little bit more and understand some of the features they could help us with modeling and things of that nature, which could certainly show us and show you all how certain diversionary trips could be bled through this network. And again, it would be a fictitious network until it's approved, but you know what I mean, we would model it. The last question, I say that for last because it's probably a hard question to answer. I'm not going to repeat what I said. You can probably read it in the verbatim minutes, but back in February or March, I think I did take a risk and point out to you what I thought was a timing consideration. It's still sensitive as an issue because I can't put a time on it. I know it's going to, I can probably get a little bit more definitive maybe as we get closer through this process, but we haven't talked to the agencies yet. And when we can talk to them and come back to this table and this body and show you some more things that maybe they helped us refine, maybe they had a different idea that enhances what we're trying to do and it's better, which we would hope as well, we might be able to get closer to giving you a timeline. It's hard to put out a number there without everybody going, oh, really? That'll not my lifetime. That's what you always hear. But believe me, Florida DOT, I've worked with them for the 20 years I've been down here. They're a very cooperative agency. They're working for all of us as taxpayers, and they want to see what we can do to help their traffic as well, help you as a city. Lee County, Collier County, we're all going to try to work together to come up with reasonable alternatives. And again, there's also private development factors in here that we can't even consider what their timing would be, if they're developing or not, if they see these plans as a hindrance to them or an encouragement to even move forward with development, which would be good for the city, bring in jobs and things of that nature. So timing's a tough question to answer, Councilman Koroma. So, you know, that's a roundabout way of answering it, but I didn't.
I don't want to pin you down if you don't want to say it, but I mean, could you say we're not going to do anything in 2017? No substantive things. It's inconceivable that we could get any of this in place by then. Is that?
You mean talk about physically in place?
Yeah.
I kind of think it's challenging for a year from now.
So that it would be more likely in 2018 when we really have to start considering consideration of substantial funding.
It all depends. We all know that the private sector moves a lot faster than the public sector. So if the private sector in some of these considerations were 100% on board, or and I am here in the spirit of cooperation from the development community that's already met with the city, we have to sit down with them, their lawyers, your solicitor, your development team, your management team, and see how we can work through this. But they already have approached the city. So, I mean, that's the spirit of cooperation in and of itself. Whether it would happen next year or 17 or 18, I'm not sure. But I think the private sector, if they see an opportunity, I think they will seize it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, I don't have any additional comments, just good work. Greg, did you have something
I
else?
just have one quick question. If everything went right, what do you think the total build-out time for this would be? 5 years, 2 years? Could all these roads be built, or all these quadrants, or is that what you're talking about? You don't.
It's kind of hard to answer, Councilman DeWitt, because they're not all going to happen together.
Well, I just wonder. I just know, like the downtown redevelopment, it's an 18-month process that we're going through. This is to me is substantially bigger. This appears
Oh, yeah.
to be like a 4 or 5 year project.
But I think the process of planning for your downtown on Old 41 was a lot more in the making than just 18 months
Correct.
construction.
That's what I mean.
I don't know. I wasn't.
I'm looking at construction. I'm not
Yeah.
really looking at the planning side. I
yeah.
just want like shovels in the ground. How long are we going to disrupt the flow of traffic on US 41, Bonita Beach Road, and the neighborhoods while
Sure.
we're constructing this?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but believe me, I know how the council feels. I've been told that by staff. We know that you are very anxious and excited about these plans, the tool design visionary plan for the city, the spirit of agency cooperation. Believe me, we're all trying to work together as fast as we can to do whatever we can to realize some movement, so it's good for everybody.
Fred?
Yeah, couple questions, a comment. On this thing, how many years, you actually, wouldn't it more than likely, you kind of do maybe one or two neighborhoods, but they'd be isolated so you wouldn't have the whole area messed up, so to speak?
Again, it would depend on the opportunity for how we prioritize it or sequence it.
Right.
Those are certainly considerations, maintenance, protection of traffic or traffic control.
Right.
Impacts to areas. Yeah, we certainly wouldn't want a lot of
Right.
down quadrants, if you will,
Right.
promoting, circuitous patterns for both the traveling public, the residents, and/or businesses, because that would be quite disruptive.
Right.
But it would be sequenced.
Very good, thank you.
Great. Okay. Yes.
So I'd like to just add on to a few of the comments. About when the new connections are made and the change in traffic patterns, what typically happens when folks add network to cities, the traffic doesn't go up, it actually goes down, because currently a lot of the traffic that will be using these streets is actually on the streets now, except today they have to go long ways to get wherever they're going. And in the future, they'll be able to go straight to their neighborhood or to their business, that kind of thing. So the actual vehicle miles traveled with more network actually drops, which frees up capacity on the bigger roads for the through traffic and any growth that might happen. So I think that's the good news about the traffic volume. The emergency vehicle question I thought was a really good one, and that's something that we really take seriously, particularly in areas that don't have a lot of network, because the emergency services have very few routes to get to places. And on these routes we're talking about, there's no ability for the fire truck to get through now because there's no street. So even if we put in a tiny street, it's better than what's there. But I think what we should do is do with the best we can when we add the network. And then I think what we're doing is really consistent with what the state DOT is encouraging, and all the professional organizations are encouraging this kind of thing when in redeveloping and developing areas. And we know we have a very small opportunity behind the mall because it's a skinny space and we're trying to make the best we can. But chances are that mall will redevelop. So we have another kick at the cat. The key is to get the connection in, and over time it can get enhanced when the mall redevelops, or the businesses by the pond, they may redevelop at some point. So one of the points is to not preclude even more connections in the future and enhance the ones that you have. And then at that time, and maybe even earlier, we can look to the property owners and the developers to actually donate right-of-way, because they have to have access. They're going to build streets in their development anyway, and instead of just adding their traffic to the already challenged existing network, their contribution to society is to provide network. And so it doesn't have to all be paid for by the municipality. It can be a partnership. And then with regard to staging, I think all of us agree, and I think John's right about not predicting anything, but I'll go out on a limb and I'll say that the Northwest, if I had to focus on anything, I'd focus on the Northwest because of the very, very limited network and redundancy coming off the beach. That you've only really got one road. So if I were to focus on anything, I would do the part around the Publix. And then about tearing up the entire city all at once, these sorts of things happen in stages and little bits. Like even if you did the street around the Publix first and not worried about the signals until later, or the roundabout till later, even that helps, and you can stage it over time without very much disruption at all. And lastly, I would say that if we could go 25 or 50 years into the future and look back, the legacy of this time isn't going to be the traffic control, the signals, the roundabouts, the U-turns. It's going to be the network itself. We have people who can study intersections and get the right traffic control, but what we can't do over time in the future is get the new street network. So that'll be the story decades from now. So if I were making a recommendation about what to focus on, it's really the network and not worrying so much about the traffic control devices. We have experts who can nail that pretty readily as a technical issue.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Arlene, Matt?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We wanted to take this opportunity, as you can see, to show you along the process as we're moving along. We're still very early in the process, so we will be posting this PowerPoint presentation on the city's website. We're also going to be continuing meetings with Lee County, Collier County, and the Florida DOT to keep them completely apprised of the process and where we are. We plan on getting their feedback, their information, and continuing those conversations as well. We will plan on having another update on as we move forward with the quadrant plan as well to you prior to the final report being delivered to council, which is anticipated in November, December timeframe.
Okay, great. Greg?
Go ahead. Do you have something to say, Matt? I'm sorry.
No, I just to echo what Arlene said, we're going to obviously utilize what you've seen today as part of our ongoing discussions with the agencies as we further this project.
And one of the other important features of this is the last council meeting, you authorized Dr. Margaret Banyan with Florida Gulf Coast University to begin implementing the Bonita Beach Road vision into the amendments to the comprehensive plan. This is an important process in preserving the future right-of-way and looking at those maps. So as we continue to keep you apprised of it and see that we're moving in the correct direction, that council is comfortable with these alignments, that conversation needs to continue through the public process of adoption into the comprehensive plan.
Right. Greg?
Yeah, I just had a question kind of for Matt. It's a little bit to do with the quadrant study, but more so with the traffic flow, and Councilman Forbes brought it up back in April. About have we, in all your talks, have we got with FDOT or DOT about the lighting sequence from out by I-75 all the way down to Beach Road? And or I know at one time we'd also talked about putting some signage at Vanderbilt and Bonita Beach Road saying Naples South. That way, if somebody's going south, they can take Vanderbilt Road instead of coming all the way up to US 41.
We've talked, and the Lee County DOT does have a project that is looking at signal timing countywide, so we have echoed our concerns within our corridor to incorporate that. I don't have a definitive answer as to the timing as to when that will happen on our corridor, but they are looking into that concern, not only countywide, but understand our concerns here in this area.
Okay. And what about, can we get a hold of Collier County and ask them to throw a sign up at Vanderbilt and Beach Road saying, hey, Naples
Actually,
South,
it
take a
would
left,
even though it's
take a right?
even though it's within Collier County's right-of-way or territory, there's actually an interlocal that allows Lee County to maintain that portion of Beach Road. So
All right.
we certainly can do that with our partners at Lee County.
Yeah, if we don't mind.
Lee, Collier, either way. Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Oh, I just wanted to touch on what Greg said, and that is that the signalization, the real thing that we want to get to, and I'm saying this for the benefit of our FDOT people in the room because they'll know there is a system where even though they're timed, they can change the timing in real time based on what the traffic conditions through sensors and all that. I understand that that's, I think, in Orange County, being evaluated now. But that's where we got to get to on Beach Road and really 41. But even retiming now or anything they can do is better than nothing. I mean, it'll make an improvement, but that'd make a big improvement.
I was going to say, we know they can be retimed because they were this past winter, right? Recalculated, recalibrated, whatever you want.
They're continuously looking at those signals. One of the challenges that you find is when we have pedestrians that utilize the crossing, the timing is stolen from the turn lanes, and it becomes a cascading effect because to regain the natural timing at the intersection, once the crosswalk is utilized, it takes several cycles for the system to regain that. So we do work closely with our partners at Lee County Traffic Signals, but yes. Short answer, yes.
Short answer, yes. Thanks, Matt. Anything? That was a long yes.
It was a short, long yes.
Mini
yes, sir.
long yes, yeah, right. Yeah. A Notre Dame yes. Yeah,
Instead of a Michigan turn.
instead of a Michigan turn, right? With St. Leo's Catholic Church down there in one of the quadrant studies, right?
Yes, sir.
You know what? Actually, I do. Now that I say that, I did have a question, just kind of briefly. We don't necessarily need. Can you put that map up by St. Leo's again? Because when we walked through it the first time, I just wasn't completely clear what we were looking to do there. Thank you.
Southwest.
Yeah, southwest. I'm not sure which is the best.
You're talking about in here?
Yes, sir. I just right. If you could walk through that again briefly, I apologize. I just.
The larger view, Mr. Mayor, was through this exhibit where
Yes.
right
Yeah,
by
thank
where,
you. That's
where
that's
Windsor,
the best.
where Windsor
Yeah,
dead
thank you,
ends
thank you.
today and your city properties right here, there was consideration to extend Windsor in this fashion. There was also consideration to extend this street on the south side of the church property, if you will, and into Foley.
And when you say that street, is that
Well, there wasn't a street. We were just proposing from where Windsor dead ends. We were
Okay, all right,
proposing
now
an
I got it.
extension along there. But it's so close to the church property here, and to put a curve in here or something would be impacting this particular area, the church property. So we kind of, it's there. One of the things that you do when you do like an alternative evaluation, you do what's called no build. You know, this was a suggestion. We just wanted to keep it in our mix of evaluation, but we thought it was problematic for the church property.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. I
For
appreciate-
safety and access.
Right, and then if we're looking at the road, the yellow road there, where we're, what are we? What is that back up to? What is that business there?
I think it's a storage facility.
It is
They
storage.
recently expanded this area back here.
Unfortunately,
It used to stop right there,
Yeah.
but they built this area, I think, in the last year or so.
Yeah.
So it's created that pinch point, if you will. I mean, if that wasn't there, we probably would come down through here and would maybe try to connect to Beaumont to get you to 41 more conveniently than this wiggle.
Right. Right.
But
Okay.
consideration again of damages and things like that, we were trying to see if we could fit something through, and it's approximately 30 foot.
Also on that south one by St. Leo's, isn't there, you'd have an easement problem with the power lines also?
There's some utility issues in there. Yes, there are, Councilman DeWitt.
Right. Thank council. Anything else, Pete?
Well, there's actually is a right-of-way, right down through Windsor to Woods Edge, but the problem
Yes,
is.
there
it's-
is.
the
There is a
problem-
right-of-way. You can see it barely in
right.
that quadrant. There's the
Right.
extension of a 50-foot right-of-way that goes all the way through. This one's probably clear. Whoops.
Yeah, that would be a.
There is a right-of-way. You
Yeah.
can see it.
It's right there.
The green area, if you will.
Right.
There is a right-of-way that goes through
But the
between
issue-
these properties.
right.
There's a right-of-way through this area, continuing straight or tangent or
Right.
south, and then it would connect to Woods Edge Place. Yes,
But
it
the
exists
issue-
today.
Right, but the issue, as you properly pointed out, and I thank you for your sensitivity, is we're now looking to dislocate, not physically, but dislocate our residences and have major traffic flow coming through that neighborhood, because that's the issue, right?
That's one of the issues. This is environmentally sensitive. Also, too, there's access constraints down here. There's
Oh,
some
really?
gated communities, so it'd be a little bit of a challenge to
Oh,
try to
interesting.
put.
It doesn't go straight through to Woods Edge, huh?
The right-of-way is physically there on paper.
Yep.
On paper, on a plat.
Oh, but not.
But it's
physi-
not physically built.
Oh,
The
interesting.
location of the gates would have to be moved.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And just on that note, the ideas around the church, the ideas to continue the street, I think we should keep those for the next generation to think about, because the church might redevelop, things might change, but if those rights of way are given up, there's no getting them back. Just like we've seen all over the place, where we would have loved to have a lot of those rights of way back, when at the time whoever was in charge made the decision, oh, we don't need those, and let them go.
Right.
But, 25 years later, we're here, we would have loved to have them not done that.
We will still show them in the final report. So as Mr. Lockwood said, you're going to consider the preservation of corridors or rights-of-way. You don't have to acquire it, but you can show it on your map.
And 25 years from now, maybe it's a shared use path. Maybe cars are different. I don't know what it will be, but if the right-of-way is not there, it's impossible.
Great, thank you. Anything else, council, or anybody at all? Okay, great. Well, then I guess we'll move on to public comment. Anybody that has public comment, please come forward.
Yeah, Rick Steinmeier. I didn't hear an answer to the question that Councilwoman Carrabba had about, we're looking at next year's budget, and we needed to kind of nail down whether we're going to have to come up with major funds in 17-18 or 16-17. This current budget that we're working on right now, and I think they could. Are you guys going to be back for more money in the next fiscal year? We have a problem right now with the budget. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Anybody else from the public? Good morning.
Good morning. Bear with me, I heard about this yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to think about this. But it seems to me there should be an environmental study along with this, because why did we move to Bonita Springs? I moved here from Los Angeles. I'm not looking to live in another big city, and I'm very grateful for the things I have in Lee County. I have amazing things like Hope Hospice that helped my family survive, and we wouldn't without it. But the other things that go along with that is the green space. Behind my home is a wildlife corridor. I know it is. I see them go by. I see bobcats go by and river otters. Why? I'm sorry. Our legacy should not be a network of roads. And it really needs to be, who are we? What kind of city do we want? And is it really, are we a town, or are we truly a city and going to be a network of concrete jungle? So this is very, very stressful. Whether you changed it from going in through my backyard, and I'm grateful for that, but why are we having uncontrolled growth? And I guess I should have been at meetings all along rather than taking care of my son, but I'm going to be here from now on because as a member of the public, this is very upsetting. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I always think that.
Good morning, and your name?
Good morning. I'm Sue Taylor on Cartwright Court, and I see that Beaumont is a problem with traffic going in and out from church, and it blocks me off Windsor, and I scream and call City Hall. And I know the timing of the lights are wrong, and I know the speed on Bonita Beach is wrong, and I see tourists out there walking in their flip-flops and think that they're going to get killed because of the traffic and the dementia out there with the aging public, and them on vacation and being happy to be here. And so I want to see Bonita Beach Road slower, and I want to see people walking and having a good time here. And I don't like how Windsor went through the back there, because it does have this new storage area, and then there's a home there, and you got like 30 feet or something I saw on the map, and that's affecting the end of my street. And I'm thinking, hey, there's no there's no homes on Beaumont, so why are you going through the back of our homesteads there? And that community deals with lots of water and flooding, and we don't need to have issues of changing our road and not being able to walk or bike up to Publix and get out through that way. I know it needs to be a little safer, but I don't think it needs to have a roundabout on it. And anyways, I know that there's an issue with the traffic with going to the beach, but I think it can be resolved with better timing of the lights and lowering the speed. And that's it.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, City Council. My name is David Wilkerson. I am the head of the Collier County Growth Management Department. And I want to thank you for your efforts and your creativity and your foresight to really look at addressing some of the traffic issues here in Bonita Springs. And on behalf of our county government, I want to thank both the city manager and the staff and the consulting team for reaching out to us and engaging us in the conversation about these improvements. And as you know, obviously, many of these roads, Bonita Beach Road, Old 41, US 41, are very important to our citizens, both for motorized and non-motorized modes of transportation. So all we ask is that you continue to engage us in the conversation. And I have talked to Matt many times, and we talk with him frequently. And, you know, allow us a seat at the table to discuss these things as we move forward. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Bernie Mason. Excuse me. And I live in that southwest quadrant we talked about. I live in a neighborhood called Woods Edge Villas, which will be very affected by any extension of a road behind St. Leo's and the Windsor Road extension. It'll affect Woods Edge Villas, a development called Carriage Homes, and a development called Bermuda Ridge. All residents, I can see that Windsor Road being right in the backyard of both residents at Vanderbilt Lakes and also Bermuda Ridge, Carriage Homes, and Woods Edge Villas. We would like to have some input to this as this goes down the road. I just found about this yesterday. I know that this had been considered and talked about informally, but it looks like, you know, there's work being done here, and we would like to be a part of it. We have a master association there called Diamond Ridge, and I'm in that. So is Carriage Home, so is Bermuda Ridge. I know Vanderbilt Lakes would like to be involved too.
Great.
I just want to put that in because we will be involved.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public? Seeing none? Okay. This workshop's adjourned. Thank you.